Let's put together some final thoughts for the first edition Pathfinder Magus. Hello there everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your Master of Lore and Storyteller Extraordinaire, here to talk to you about the first edition Pathfinder Magus. Today, we're going to do some final thoughts on the overall strategies and tactics for this class, and in particular, this build that we have here. Certainly, this isn't the only way to build this class. This is just meant to be, well, as always, a guide. A guide meant to kind of give you the ins and outs of how this works, how things can be put together. But ultimately, it's up to you to go out and find how you want to put this class together and build the character that you want to play. Whatever's going to give you the most amount of fun. That's the goal after all, and that's really the only way to play wrong is to not have fun, or to actively be a jerk and ruin the fun for everybody else at the table. But you're not like that. I know you're not. Good on you for not being like that. So, what do I think about this class so far? Well, overall, it's a pretty interesting one. It's very handy, very flexible, but it can be a little bit mad, a little bit multiple attribute dependent, ability dependent. So depending on which stats you want to focus on and emphasize, that'll dictate kind of how you want to play overall. But before we get into everything we have available for you here, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or if you've already gone on ahead and listed yourself on such an incredible roster of legendary heroes, then go on down to hit the like button and share this video far and wide. But now let's keep going with these thoughts. So, it's definitely a class that's meant to be getting into the thick of the fighting. You don't have the staying power as a full spellcasting class like a summoner, sorcerer, cleric, druid, wizard, anything that goes up to the 9th level spells. You're just not going to have that there. You're missing out just on the levels of spells in general. But having our use magic device skill and taking a trait that lets us swap out charisma for using our intelligence score to activate that skill, well, that can open up a whole host of other magic abilities for you, give you a range and accessibility with it all that might otherwise be denied to you, especially since we're using charisma as our dump stat. Also, by leaning into and relying on our dexterity score for being able to hit our targets and deal extra damage to them, we don't have to worry about strength quite so much. Now, I'd advise against tanking those stats too low. I certainly wouldn't take them down past an 8 if I could help it, but once you get down below that, it's just the reason why is once you get below 8, you get to be really at risk for any stat draining attacks that might hit those. Shades and other kinds of creatures that can drain strength will soon leave you pretty helpless if you're down below an 8, unable to really function all that effectively. Same thing for your charisma, you'll start to go catatonic and everything, so definitely don't let yourself go too far low in your stats, even if they are your dump stats. But by focusing on charisma, it's just that prime stat. As we've talked about multiple times, that is your defense or your armor class and touch armor class, your reflexes, your initiative, several of your skills, and now your ability to hit at range, melee, and deal damage in melee. So dexterity does a lot of heavy lifting for you. And then also by focusing on intelligence, you're boosting your spell save DCs, you're getting extra skill points, and you're getting bonus spells per spell level out of that. So that is going to be a pretty solid combination there. However, don't neglect your constitution score. If you do find an item that will help to boost your constitution, that's only going to serve to help you because you are meant to get into the thick of the fighting at some point. Most of your skills dictate that you have to do that, like Arcane Pool and Spell Strike, which Arcane Pool does actually quite a bit for you. It makes you less dependent on having such a heavily enchanted weapon to make use of in the middle of a fight. You could easily get away with only having a +1, maybe a +2 weapon for a good chunk of the game because your Arcane Pool lets you provide an enhancement bonus to your weapon overall. And also throw on enchantments like Keen, Speed, Shock, any number of others that you might conceivably need, even if it's something like Flaming Burst or just Flaming, which, while that is the most common element type to be resisted or for creatures to have outright immunity to, for those instances where you're facing down such creatures that have no such immunity, you can happily apply that and make good use of that for your weapon. And in this case, we're focusing on a cutlass, but even if you went down the more traditional route and went with a scimitar, well, you're still going to be pretty well served there, just even having a +1 or +2 weapon. And in comparison to +5 weapons that are just bedecked and endowed with all kinds of different enhancements and spell work just inscribed upon the length of that blade, that's a pretty expensive item to replace if you lose it or it gets destroyed somehow. But a +1 or a +2 magic weapon, sure, that's nothing you really want to go out of your way to lose, but you're certainly not going to be hurting if you have to do without it, not so much as other classes might. Heck, you could pick up a club, just any wooden club off the ground, and bam, now you have a magic weapon in your hands, and you can really start laying into your opponents and catch several of them off guard. And to top it off with your spell strike ability, when you're casting touch spells, you can channel those through your weapons, which really help to spike your damage overall. And that's another reason why you want to lean into a weapon like the cutlass or the rapier, something that has an extensive crit range, so that 18 to 20 times 2. Sure, you're not getting times 3 damage out of it, but that 18 to 20 means that you're going to be having more critical hits coming up more often. And so channeling your spells through that, well, the spell damage is now doubled. Your attack damage is now doubled, so that 1d6, and then plus whatever your dexterity modifier is, that all is getting doubled there with that. So getting Keen put on it expands that to a 15 to 20, so about a fourth of your attacks are going to be critical hits. So that's going to really, really play into your favor there. And so this class and its class abilities really dictate that you be going into melee at some point, especially since as you gain levels and advance and gain more training, you start unlocking medium armor and heavy armor. Now, since we're going with a dex focused build, you're really not going to be leaning into taking up heavy armor, but it at least is an option for you. So again, if you're in a situation where your regular equipment's not available to you, you can don just about anything at higher levels and be reasonably assured that you're going to have a decent armor class. But sticking into something like a chain shirt or haramaki or that celestial armor to get that as full a dex bonus to your defense as possible is going to be paramount. And same thing with doing things with your spells. Having items that help to expand spell duration for any number of buffs is going to do so much to help improve your longevity over the course of a game, because that's a big weakness for the magus looking at this here, other than the fact that you don't have a higher hit die like a D10 or a D12. D8's not bad, especially with the armor combinations that you can be throwing together here, but your longevity and durability in a fight is what's at stake and at risk here. So if a DM is swarming you with lots of low to mid threat chaff at you, opponents that are meant to really push you, well, you're now at a choice of does this fight prolong longer and I potentially take more hits, or do I start burning my touch spells and start getting that damage spike to start tearing through my opponents? Do I start using up points out of my Arcane Pool in order to have my weaponry boosted and get through everything faster? That is going to be a pretty tough choice and a pretty tough call for you in those instances. Hopefully, the party's main spellcaster or the fighter, the barbarian, whoever has cleave and high strength and wielding a two-handed weapon can start tearing through opponents and free you up so that you can actually make ready and regular use of your high damage things in the more important fights. So that's really what you're going to want to go for there. So be prepared for those instances where you are getting swamped with mid to low threat enemies that you may not necessarily want to burn up all of your resources on, but could potentially still end up nailing you with a couple of attacks and reducing your overall hit point total later on. And as far as your Arcana option goes, we covered a lot of those pretty well earlier, but just to kind of recap, also recapping for myself too, picking up a familiar is going to just be incredibly useful for you. It's another body on the battlefield. It's more benefit to you, more bonuses. Like if you take that green sting scorpion, that's a bonus to your dexterity score, to your initiative. Actually, your initiative bonus overall there is going to be a nice thing. And with your dexterity score boosted so high, meshing with the bonus from a green sting scorpion, you're going to be regularly going first. And in your case, you're competing with enemy casters. Enemy casters want to go first. So if you can get ahead of them, dive in, especially using Dimension Door, and then your spell combat, throwing down spells, unleashing a full attack action, you're going to make an enemy spellcaster's life a living nightmare, or tragically shortening it to just the first couple of rounds of combat. Also, Arcana like Enduring Blade, once you hit level 6, will be an option that does so much for helping to make sure that your Arcane Pool is able to last as long as possible. So that will be maximally important for you. And if you're dealing with a target that has high armor class due to their armor, so you're fighting an opponent in full plate, an Arcana like our Accurate Strike that makes your melee attacks touch attacks will be very useful, because targets that are in full plate armor, they're not typically going to have the best dexterity scores, so their touch armor class is going to be relatively low and make them particularly vulnerable to you. So even if you're not facing an enemy spellcaster, you can still deal an incredible amount of damage to even these targets, especially combining them with your spell strike, channeling your touch spells through your weaponry. So you have a whole array of options there, and quite a bit of flexibility available to you in the kinds of targets you want to go for. Just bear in mind that geeking the mage first, taking out the enemy spellcaster, is going to be probably the most important thing for you, whether that's a druid, a cleric, or whatever you may be facing down. And so, yeah, that's about the gist of it there overall. Just try to, let me see here. Let me go through the slides real quick. Things that like lunge that increase your threatened area will also make you a nightmare for enemy spellcasters, and expanding your Arcane Pool with the extra Arcane Pool feat will do so much for you. Even if it's just an additional 2 points to your Arcane Pool, that is well worth it for you to do. That's going to do a lot to help you with that durability. And also things like dimensional agility, which we picked up at 11th level, after casting Dimension Door, being able to use any of your remaining actions on your turn and getting a +4 to your concentration checks when casting teleport spells, that's a pretty nice and hefty combination to have right there for you. So using any remaining actions that you have means that you will be able to get pounce on a target no matter how far away they might try to be from you. Remember that Dimension Door has an incredible range to it. Your only real limitation to it is line of sight, so as long as you can see it and have a safe place to land, you're going to be able to get there. Or pairing it up with flying, I'd say you'd be able to fly right through the Dimension Door and end up right next to that flying target and make their lives just an absolute living hell as you lay into them. So plenty of fun to be had there. And then your spell selection gets a little bit more disappointing after 4th level, so 5th and 6th level. While there are still some powerful spell options there available to you, the whole roster as it is just isn't really all that special, or at least doesn't mesh well with what you're going for. So this is a class where I'd say well, any class that can cast spells can benefit from working with the DM to create new spells, but you in particular would benefit from being able to create new touch attack spells. Even if all you did was work off of existing spells as a base template, you could still take something like Shocking Grasp and change it over to a corrosive acid touch kind of a thing. If your DM is looking for a way to justify it, well, just take a look at Shocking Grasp. You're channeling electricity to strike the target, and you're grasping them. But how does that work channeling acid through your hands? Electricity travels through your body, but you don't naturally have that much electricity in your body unless you build up a bit of a static charge, and even then, that's at best 1 point of non-lethal damage. So you could break it down as an explanation of, well, with Shocking Grasp, I'm utilizing the ambient arcane magical energies, drawing them into myself, and using that to enhance the amount of electric charge my body's able to produce, using inherent bioelectricity and enhancing it and replacing it as I strike. And it's not until the moment that I actually hit that the charge goes off, and it does no damage to me because, well, physics at that point, the electricity is traveling through me and into the target and dealing damage to them from there. Or at least, some kind of explanation like that. So how does that transfer to having like a corrosive touch spell? Well, in that case, just think about the oils that your body naturally produces. The oils that you leave through your hands and fingerprints and stuff, they're inherently corrosive. It's why when I'm cleaning any of my swords, I have to wipe them down after, because if I let it sit, then the fingerprints, the acids, the oils, the inherent levels of pH in it, they're going to start corroding the metal where they've touched, and that corrosion will eventually spread. So it's very slow acting, but kind of sounds like a point of non-lethal damage that takes a long time to really sink in and settle and deal damage over time from there. So you're taking in the ambient arcane magical energies. You're enhancing the amount of corrosion that your body is able to produce, and you're just building it up for the moment and placing it on your target and dealing an incredible amount of damage from there. So you can readily explain the effects of it overall there, and it can just be Shocking Grasp but acid damage. It's just that you're enhancing the inherent corrosive nature of your body's own natural oils. So that's just an example right there. You can go about it so many other ways and create a lot of other interesting spells. But what do you think? Go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Did you like today's video? Did you dislike it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below here. This definitely is a very good character sniping class, although sniping's not exactly accurate. You're not at a range. You're getting in close into the thick of fighting and taking out a target very quickly. You're in many ways kind of better than a rogue, especially since you can throw down your familiar on the other side of your target and start getting that +2 flanking bonus. Granted, that puts your familiar at risk of being squashed by whatever you're fighting, but still, my point remains valid. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Don't forget to hit those like or dislike buttons. And remember, if you're new here to the channel, then go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. With all that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time, and good gaming to you all, and you all have yourselves a good night.